Just wanted to hop in and talk to you for a second. Before we get into the fullness of the religions, I wanted to talk about a couple of the religious views of the afterlife. Um, Here is depicted a scene from the Egyptian afterlife of people lining up after they're dead to go into the realm of the dead. Now, to actually go to kind of the paradise, which is the kingdom of Osiris, you had to pass a couple of tests. After you died, you met with the judges, and you had to name the 42 judges of the dead. You had to know all of those by heart. Then you had to recite the sins that they did not commit. I mean, sorry, you had to recite the sins that you did not commit. Then you could be judged worthy. After you were judged worthy by the judges, you were then had your heart removed, and it was put on a scale and weighed against a feather of Mot, the bird god. You see there next to kind of the scales. If it was lighter, you could enter the kingdom of Osiris. If not, then Ammit devoured the heart and the person was destroyed. So either you went to paradise or you ceased to exist after you died, depending on what you did, depending on if you could pass the test. The Sumerians, who were another kind of that Babylonian, Middle Eastern, um, ancient Near East culture, believe that the graves are an access to the underworld, and that the underworld is ruled by its own deities. The to Once you die, you go into the grave, you go into the underworld, and you have to be sustained by your family that's still living. So your families leave offerings on your grave to bribe the deities who are separate from the deities that rule the world to have you have a better afterlife. But we all go to the same afterlife in the Sumerian belief. It's gray, it's dark, it's dismal, and everyone thirsts and eats dust. So no matter what your family bribes you with, you don't really get anything. But the food that they give is transformed into kind of that dust that you eat, and that's your sustenance in the afterworld. If your family ceases to take care of you, then you cease to exist. The Greek afterlife is a little different. You die, you go, you ferry across the river. You probably all are kind of familiar with this idea of Chiron and the river Styx. The dead had to pay the ferryman, and if you didn't, you roam the shore for 100 years, then you can move on. There's kind of different levels here of the meadows, which are just fine for the fine person. You have the morning fields, which are just a bunch of people wandering for those who did not find love and that died with that unrequited love that they had in their hearts. Elysium is where the distinguished went, a life of luxury where no labor awaited. However, if you got to Elysium, you could choose to be reborn 3 times, and if you return to Elysium all 3 times, you would then get access into an eternal paradise, which is much better than Elysium. All of your hopes, all of your desires, all your dreams would be met there in that afterlife. And I know we're just flying through this, but we just want to paint this picture of religious beliefs of the afterlife before we fully get into talking about the other religions. In Judaism, there's a couple of things that are going on. You have this idea that when you die, you go to Gehenna, which gets translated into hell. It's a desolate place used for trash. It's actually outside of the city of Jerusalem. You can go visit it. It's a trash heap. Kings would murder and dispose their rivals there. People would throw their bodies there along with their trash. You also have Sheol, which is used a lot in the Judaic scriptures, which is really just the grave. You're dead, you're dead, you're dead. No afterlife in that idea. But you also have Abraham's bosom, referring back to one of their patriarchs, one of their leaders and forefathers, which is a place of comfort in death. No real big description of what that looks like. You also have the Morai. So after the funeral, the spirit of the deceased travels along the coast up to a tree, and then spirit will skim along the beach, it'll go down, slide down the tree, and then travel underwater through the current. It leads to the land, to an island. The spirit climbs up the hill's largest point for a final look back at the world. Then it plunges into the deep to return back to the creator god's safekeeping. Then the spirit will be reborn. And with this just brief outline, I want to ask you the question: which afterlife do you want? Which afterlife sounds appealing to you? Do you want something like the Egyptians, where you can get the annihilation? Do you want something like maybe Judaism with Sheol? Do you want to take a gamble at the Sumerian? Would you shoot for the Isle of the Blessed? That's my question for you today.